All right, lesson number 11, the power of thought. One of the things we are told in philosophy, and common sense in general, is a human being generates three types of energy normally, which are thought, desire, and action. These are things that characterize our lives and are acting in the living process, inevitably. It is thanks to these three aspects, that we really, unfold inner possibilities. Now, of course, it comes to logic to try to determine what thought is, what it is. Evidently, it is invisible. Thoughts we cannot see. It can be seen, however, clairvoyantly, when we develop the ability to do so, through a training which is particularly harsh and particularly demanding, which allows us to see what is known in theosophical parlance, thought forms. Yes, thoughts have form, and the form has an aspect that has to do with the quality of the thought. For instance, a thought of hatred, fostered by whatever situation is that has make us angry against someone, will show normally over the head of the person, when it is seen clairvoyantly, as a sort of a little monster, very ugly looking. Hatred is something that goes exactly against the law of nature, the law of love, which is the law that moves the universe. So we're swimming against the tide there. We're swimming against the current of the river of life. It's not an intelligent thing to do. We're not going to move very fast. We're not going to move at all to begin with. And we're going to create a lot of problems, among them karmic ones. One must never really give in to that type of passion. No matter what the situation is, we must make every effort to remain serene, because the rest is not going to solve anything. At the same time, it's going to create problems for us and for other people as well. Acting against the laws of nature, which are essentially directed by the fundamental law of the universe, which is the law of love, when we ignore those laws, there's a price to be paid in terms of karmic debts especially. It's very important, however, to make an effort to live by these laws in harmony with them, and not compromise therefore our advancement and create an environment which is not pleasant for us and those who surround us, whether in our family or work environment or whatever. One must keep serenity at all costs. You may have a moment of anger, I give it up, but to keep, a serious indignation and a fury, a really indignation that really creates, a problem, and keep it, it's the worst thing that we can do. Because that little monster that forms as a thought form over our head will crystallize and will start dictating our thoughts towards those people or those who have generated the anger in us. Therefore, to keep away anger is perhaps the best thing we can possibly do. If what we really want to do is not to interrupt our advancement. Anything that we do, in life should always be fostering our inner advancement. Try to avoid things. We need to try to avoid things which will be in the way of our advancement. Advancement being the only reason why we're here. That's the only reason that makes sense. Otherwise, nothing does make sense in life, except the fact that we are unfolding a wonderful potential we all have within ourselves. So to compromise that doesn't make any sense. Now, what is thought? It's an electrical impulse. Thoughts are electrical. In the universe, practically everything is electrical. And it's a form of electricity of which we have no control about, of course. We don't have electricity. The type of electricity we use normally, the ones we have managed to put under our control, are for illuminating a city or electrocuting criminals or whatever. This type of electricity is perhaps the grossest type. We have 2 or 3 identified, different voltages and so on. Pretty busy. But there are electricities which are much more powerful and much more subtle than the ones we are concerned with. And one of them is thought. It is an energy, and it is electrical. Now, where does it come from? That's one thing that we need to ask ourselves. When I conceive a thought of some kind, I assume it is the product of my brain. Mistake. From this point of view, the brain is unable to create any kind of thought. It cannot initiate it. It cannot generate thought of any kind. It's strictly an instrument to receive and transmit, just like a radio station. That's what it is, the brain. Nothing else. Oh, so then what happens is that our thoughts come from our mind. Yes, they do come from our mind, but our mind doesn't generate them either, unless we allow it. The mind can generate thoughts. If we teach it to generate thoughts, if we keep thinking all the time, the mind gets used to it, and starts having thoughts of its own. That is the worst thing that can happen to us, because the mind is an energy, and energies have no ethics. The mind is unable to distinguish between a thought that is noble and lofty, and a thought that is gross and low. It's an energy. Energies have no ethics. So therefore, to allow our mind to think for us, to suggest to us things that are not the very best that we can think of, that they indicate selfishness and inconsideration for others, is the worst thing we can do, and that will compromise our advancement to a good extent. It's something that we need to avoid completely. What you can, surmise from this is that we need to learn how to control our mind. We need to keep in mind all the time that the physical body, each etheric double, the astral body and the mind are the instruments that nature has given us to think with, to feel with, and to act with. They are our instruments, but they're not us. You hear many people say, I got everything up here in my mind, and they point at the brain. They have no idea what they're talking about. It has nothing to do with that. The real thinker, the one with the thoughts, and because it is divine, it cannot have any kind of nasty thoughts of any nature. Only pure ones and beautiful ones. It's the self that we are, the spiritual ego, the one that lives in the body, and the one that uses the mind to think with. Why does it need to use the mind? Because thinking is a consciousness aspect, which the monad, or the spiritual ego, of which is an extension of the monad, has not yet developed by itself. So it requires this instrument to think with, in the same fashion that a musician, say a classical composer, will need a violin to express the music of his violin concerto. Without that instrument for the soloist to execute, there would be absolutely no concert. The man will have the music in his heart and in his mind, but he will not be able to project it, not be able to express it. In order for us to express thought, we must be able to think. And in order to think properly, we need a mind to think with. That's our instrument to think with. The same way that the violin is an instrument for the violinist to play the music. The music doesn't come from the violin, but through the violin, the thinker is a musician in this particular case. Our instrument to think is the mind. The same way the violin is an instrument for the musician to produce music. But the music is coming from the musician through the violin. In our cases, the thought, all our thoughts, our thinking process comes from the self that we are. We are the thinker. Through the mind. Without the mind, we cannot think. For a while, eventually, as we advance and evolve, we will dispense with the mind, and we will be able to think without it. We have reached the unfoldment necessary that makes it unnecessary to have a mind. We will be able to think on our own without problem. But that's ahead of us in the future as evolution takes place. But from the moment, there are two things to take into consideration which are essential if we really want to advance in this path, the spiritual path. Number one, that we are not our mind. Number two, that we need to learn how to control that mind. How do you control that mind? There's only one system that I'm aware of. Maybe there are others. I cannot say that there's no other system. But there's one system I'm totally aware of, and that is meditation. Many people tell me that they meditate. When they explain to me what they do, I realize they're not really meditating. They're trying to do something, but meditation is not doing something. Meditation is doing nothing, essentially. What the only thing we need to do is to establish the conditions under which meditation will happen with us. That's all. For that we need to silence the mind. And it will not be easy. Trying to silence the mind, say for instance, concentrated for 3 minutes in any object, you will try the experiment and you will see the difficulty. The first time I tried that, I was a young man, I was asked to do this. I could never go over 1 minute without a shower of thoughts coming over, pushed on me by my mind. I was 25 years old at that moment, and for 25 years I had allowed my mind to conduct my life, because I didn't know any better. And now, of course, the difficulty was that my mind is not going to release control over me. It's used to it. It wants to control my life. So, to wrestle this away from the mind is not going to be easy. It may take weeks, months, years sometimes. So to eventually put the instrument, which is what the mind is, under our control 100%. We cannot say that we are living and that we have control of our life if we are letting our mind control our life. When we read history and go back, the last 2,000 years, which is the most recorded history that we have, we really get surprised at seeing the mistakes made, the wrongdoings of our leaders, both religious and political, which has gotten us into horrible trouble with very bloody wars and horrors of any kind, an obscurity and an ignorance, which has besieged mankind for 2,000 years. As a result of what? As a result of our leaders being conducted by their mind. Instead of them using their mind has been using them. And the mind has no ethics. So selfishness is predominant. A country thinks that they have a right to a certain territory, a certain actions, whatever, at the expense of a neighboring country, and they don't care. They just want that territory because it has oil or whatever the reason may be, and they will jump the other country without thinking of the damage they are doing to their neighbors. Selfishness is what is guiding them by ideas fostered by their minds, because the mind, I repeat, has no ethics. It will calculate for benefit. That's it. So we as a self have to say to the mind, no. That type of thought, forget it. Before we proceed on some idea that you're suggesting to me, I'm going to find out what damage am I going to do to my neighbors. And then I will proceed. That is a way of showing the mind that we're in control. We may choose the long road in that sense, thinking very carefully every time we are about to take an action, so as to gradually give the mind the idea that we're not going to proceed just on the suggestions the mind does, gives us, makes us. But we will think very carefully about what we do. It may take a long time. I suggest that meditation is perhaps a quickest, more effective method, to put the mind under control. Something quite remarkable happens then. It's an experience that cannot be described, but it is extremely pleasant. That's one thing that, everybody who goes through it has always said. The moment we manage to silence our mind, however time is going to take us, the moment we silence it, a channel is open for our higher self. And the experience is unforgettable. It's quite remarkable. We discover a real spiritual identity. The self that we really are, we become conscious of it over the personality. And that is remarkable. That's one of the wonderful things about meditation. And it's why this activity has gone on through millenniums, and even millions of years back. When it was discovered that meditation was a way of managing the mind and putting it, silence it, and put it under our control, and then put our life under our control. It was adopted, as a method that has given, of course, a great deal of satisfaction to many. At the same time, it has fostered their inner advancement. There are many types of meditation, of course, and it all depends what you're searching for, what you're looking for. If we're looking for a silencing the mind, that is the best way to do. You simply sit down as comfortable as you can. You don't have to cross your legs, because that is the oriental way. You don't need to do that. But what you can do, and you should do, is keep your spine straight, vertical, completely perpendicular to the ground. as straight as you can, in a very comfortable seat. So if you're uncomfortable, you will be distracted. So you need to be very comfortable. And then concentrate. Start with 2 minutes on one thing. Anything that you choose. A telephone, an ashtray, some kind of a candle, lit or unlit, whatever you want. Concentrate on that for 3 minutes. You will see how difficult it is, but eventually it's possible. And then you go above 3 minutes, and you go for 10 minutes and so on, and eventually you find yourself silencing that torrent of thoughts that the mind is pushing on us all the time. The mind is like a monkey on a tree, jumping from branch to branch. Most of the thoughts are frivolous and useless. What the mind is trying to do is like a little animal. It likes control over us. He's used to it. And we are going to have to wrestle it from it. There's no other way. And it will resist. In this particular case, persistence is the key. Determination, discipline. Eventually the mind recognizes that it's being subjugated and will respond in kind. And we will have an obedient instrument for our advancement in our process of evolution. Now, sometimes you realize, especially when you read in history, again, we quote history, that when someone comes with a new idea on something, even if the idea is great, solves a lot of problems, and it's better than anything else that was done before on that particular field, there is a resistance to it. Sometimes it's very unfortunate because the recognition of the value of the idea happens when the individual already has disincarnated and his body is 6 feet under the ground. It's really regrettable because we have no chance then to thank him or her for whatever they've done for us. But it happens. Why? Why is it that there's a general tendency to reject at first hand what we're told that changes things? It's a new idea. Because what happens is that when we think, we start creating grooves of thought through which we move with ease because they're familiar to us. But when someone comes with a new idea, we haven't built that groove. We have not excavated it. So we don't feel comfortable for that groove. This is an unconscious process, of course, so it must be discarded when somebody comes up with what appears to be a good idea. Forget about the fact that it's unfamiliar to us and start building the grooves right there to understand the idea clearly and then most likely to accept it when we realize it's a better one than the one we had before. But to reject outright things, without examining them, because our tendency is to reject that which is unfamiliar because we don't have the grooves to move by, is not a wise thing to do. It's important to create those grooves and to examine carefully what we're told, because it may be in our benefit and the benefit of everyone sometimes. It's very important to have that. Now, it's important also to remember that our thoughts will have influence over others. Some people have a very weak mind. The great majority of people have a mind that's not educated, so it's very weak. But there are some people who have a powerful mind and they don't even know it. Whatever they think will have an influence over others. Needless to say, this represents a great deal of responsibility. We have it. Because if we will be influencing others with our thoughts, those thoughts better be positive, adequate, clean. If our thoughts are going to be of a negative nature, of this destructive, gross nature, that will be the imprint that we're going to put in other minds, which are weaker than ours and will be influenced easily by what we think. We have to be careful along those lines. A strong mind represents a measure of development. Development must be treated with care. The moment we learn and the moment we unfold and develop a certain amount of power, whether mental or other type, we become responsible. This is the important thing to remember. Some people think that they acquire knowledge for themselves and that's it, no problem with the others. That's a great mistake. We must understand that we are responsible, we are more and more responsible the more knowledge and unfoldment we have. We cannot claim ignorance. We know better. So therefore that puts us in a different situation than that of the average individual who doesn't know any better and then proceeds clumsily because of that. We have no excuse for clumsiness in this particular case. Or to think thoughts that will be influence others unduly, inappropriately, and create havoc in their lives. We're very careful with this whole thing. Thoughts with our harbor hatred or envy, one of these lower passions that we all have to some extent in our astral body, must be eliminated. We must think about it, review ourselves, somehow try to investigate if we really are prone to this, to express this type of thoughts, and then try to eliminate them any way possible, because they will never be useful. They will be a problem. They will create difficulty for us and for others, and they will also create a karmic debt for us that will be very painful to pay. So why complicate our lives thinking improperly? Let's think positively and properly, and we'll have no problem. This is an important thing to keep in mind. Now, it's also normal in people which are self-conscious and which are trying to improve and so on, the continual mental criticism. It doesn't help anything. On the contrary, let's forget about that. It cannot be something that is continually inwardly. We are not saying it, we don't express it, but we are continually reproaching ourselves. We are continually, sort of thinking poorly about ourselves, and this becomes a habit. And as we said in the past lesson, those habits, they get attached in the mental world. They're reflected by the reflecting ether, and they become a part of our consciousness at physical level. That's something that should never happen. Okay, we must understand that we are beings in development, in unfoldment. So therefore, it's normal to express from us all kinds of mistakes, wrongdoings, wrong thoughts, and that sort of thing. As long as we are conscious of the process, we can always have a chance to change it. But to feel guilty all the time and to be continually reproaching ourselves, sort of ill-thinking of ourselves because of our failings and all these lines is not useful, and something that should be avoided at all costs. Also, there's a tendency to some people to worry. A situation is taking place which appears to be sometimes grave, very difficult, complicated. We've done everything we can to solve it, and it's beyond us, and we cannot do it. So what sets in is worry. The individual cannot even sleep. He's so worried about what's happening. He's so concerned with what's going to happen as a result of the situation, the consequences. Sometimes it's not even his fault, but the consequences are the result of what other people have done in the family or whatever. And the individual is incredibly concerned and worried and so on. Worry will add to the discomfort that we're feeling at the possible consequences of what's happening, but it will not solve the problem. Eliminate worry is the most important thing in the world. Worry should never be with us. All we have to make sure is to know that we did our best to solve the situation. If we honestly think we did, leave it to that imponderable. Leave it to, if you will think along these terms, religious terms, leave it to God. In my personal life, in the personal lives of many other people that I've talked to about this thing, it has happened so many times that we were in front of a dark wall. We're saying to ourselves, I did everything that I cannot solve this problem. And we're very concerned, very worried, and so on. Suddenly the whole thing is solved by itself. Comes to mind for Winston Churchill, the British statesman, of the 20th century. One day said in his biography, the only thing I do regret in my long and political career is to have worried so much, have lost so much sleep about things that never happened. Worrying is it's useless, and it adds to the unpleasantness of the situation. Let's have faith in that imponderable. I don't know what it is, but something intervenes and comes into play when the situation needs to be solved. It always does. If it is something karmic that we cannot avoid, it will happen anyway, and it will be a learning process. It will be for our benefit in the long run. So there's no reason to despair along those lines either. But fundamentally, being worried is not going to solve the problem. On the contrary. So, let's avoid about worry. Another important thing to be concerned with thought is that the people which have died, people who have, disincarnated, because nobody really dies, but we disincarnate, are within the reach of our thoughts. If somebody disincarnates and we are continually thinking of that person as a personal loss that we have, and we are continually mentally reproaching ourselves and life and that person, why did you leave me? I mean, I'm alone now. You shouldn't have left me. Why does it happen that I'm this way? Why am I separated? These thoughts will reach the individual who has disincarnated and will fill him with discomfort and despair. When we are on the other side, so to speak, we don't stop feeling. On the contrary, everything is felt with much more intensity. And to feel the pain of our relatives left behind in the physical world is very painful, very difficult to deal with. If we really love someone, we are not going to do that. We are not going to allow that to happen and create pain for them. Nobody stays forever in this world. Our relatives, our loved ones will part, and so will we, eventually, all of us. That's inevitable. Then we will be together again, if there has been love, if there has been truly love. A link has been established that will never be broken. That is the most powerful element in the universe, the force of love. It will bring us together, when people have really loved each other, in a true sense, without selfishness, but with every consideration, and with a true, very deep, profound love for one another. We get back together. Karma will always operate along those lines. So there's no need to despair when somebody that we love very much leaves his physical body and leaves the physical world. It's only a separation which will be temporary. Eventually, we will be together again. This is part of our development. The element of love is a fundamental tool in our process. So nature will do everything possible to foster that love in us, and put us together with those that we really and truly love. Be very careful, consequently, with our thoughts with respect to those who have already disincarnated. It's important to have them positive, not to despair, please, and try to, tell them, keep advancing, keep moving on. In other words, learning to let go is an important thing for us. Not all of us are capable of that. But we need to train ourselves in order to learn how to let go when we need to let go, because there are some things which are inevitable. To keep our thoughts in what we call the second principle of the 7 principles that a human being has, buddhi, in the intuition, is the most important thing because it's a very high level. Try to think always in terms of positive and adequate ways, like planting, as we said in the past lesson, planting in our mental world, in our niche there, planting positive things that will be reflected by a reflecting ether, communicated to our astral body, which in turn, in the form of desire, will pass it on to the physical body. If instead of putting there a bottle of liquor, or a cigarette, or whatever, which represents negative, destructive addiction, we put there a desire for exercise, for instance, a desire for philanthropy, a desire for concern for others, and that sort of thing, that will be reflected by our reflecting ether and communicated to our emotional nature, our astral body, and then from there to our physical body, so that it will act accordingly. It's a very important thing to do. A method for meditation is to sit very carefully, as I said before, with a straight spine, and then concentrate your mind on one thing. It could be a word that you repeat. You may close your eyes and imagine something that is only one thing though. When that happens, you silence the mind and you are in meditation. It is impossible to meditate if we have not developed the ability to concentrate. Concentration is the first step to meditation. Once we have achieved that, everything is possible. Normally, we are in a state of agitation, we sit down to meditate. The way to calm ourselves down, it must remember that we have the brain, human brain emits 4 types of waves. They are electrical. This is biology, this is no theosophy. They have been measured, and we know they exist. Alpha, beta, delta, and zeta. Delta and zeta represents the stage of ecstasy or whatever, very advanced spiritually. But there are two which are key in us. Normally, we move in beta waves. Beta waves are the ones associated with the agitation of everyday life. But alpha waves, however, represent, a state of relaxation. That is possible to obtain by means of breathing. You sit down to meditate with the spine straight, as I said before, comfortable sitting, and then breathe deeply through the nose, hold it for 5 seconds, and then let go. Very slowly as well. Wait another 5 seconds without breathing, and then breathe again through the nose. Another 5 seconds and let go through the mouth. And so on, until you complete 10 breathings. Wait 15 minutes and try again. Another 10. And then another 10, and then another 10 to complete 40 breathings. Sometimes before you reach that point, you are already in alpha. Alpha means one feels a feeling of enormous relaxation, peace, and so on. This is a mechanical thing. There's nothing very sophisticated about it. What happens is that when we breathe with intent, with deep breathing, we over-oxygenate the blood. Now the extra dose of oxygen in the blood is carried through the nervous system, which relaxes as a result of that. We have enough power there. And that relaxation, the nervous relaxation, brings about this feeling of peace, and tranquility, characterized by what we call alpha, state. The alpha state, consequently, is very important to be able to meditate properly. That is the process of meditation. It's a simple thing to do. It should never be, it shouldn't be less than 5 minutes, because it wouldn't be very effective, but it should never go about 45 minutes. Right now, the planet is receiving energies that are very powerful, because it's aligned with the center of the sun of the galaxy, and it's not advisable to go above 45 minutes. A minimum of 5 minutes, a maximum of 45 minutes is what meditation should be all about. And anybody can do it, no problem there. If it doesn't work in the beginning, in terms of the mind intruding all the time, the key to it is persistence, determination, until finally the mind will give up. It's like a horse. When it's a savage horse, which is crude and everything, and it's been just gotten from the mountains, you mount it, it will jump like crazy. But if you hold on to it, and you don't let it bring you down, eventually the animal will give in. And it will be a docile instrument to move, to go, transporting yourself where there's no other means of transportation. You will go where you tell it to go. The mind is like an animal too. We can educate it. It's very important to keep control over it if we want to keep control of our life. This is the most important thing. Now, when it comes to this, to close this lesson, I like to cite, the German poet, Goethe, who had 5 rules by which he lived his life, and which he really advises us on.
¿Lo trajo? No. ¿Sí?
No sé si lo traje.
Yo creo que no, porque yo no.
The great philosopher and German poet gave us 5, as I said before, rules to live our life in the most adequate possible way. Okay? And this I like to share with you now. She says, do not worry about your past. That was the first one. We usually get involved with the past. Sometimes we have rancors, things that we haven't forgotten, people we haven't forgotten, what we feel they did to us or whatever. This is absolutely useless and it's destructive and should be avoided completely from our thoughts. The past is gone. There's nothing we can do about it. Let's learn from it. It brings our lessons. Use them, the lessons from the past. But don't stay with the past. The past, you cannot stay with something that does no longer exist. Very wisely, Goethe then said to us, don't live in the past. Do not worry about your past. Do not be angry. Anger is the worst thing that can happen to the astral body. It has sometimes effects that will last for years in it. Explosions of anger should always be avoided, from our actions, from our life. There may be many situations which will be profoundly irritating, and rightly so, because sometimes circumstances or people happen in a way that is really indignant. And so, no matter how justified we think by being exploding in anger and that sort of thing, true anger, with fury and that sort of thing, it is profoundly inadequate. So the second thing that Goethe tells us is, don't be angry. It doesn't solve anything. On the contrary, it brings some nastiness to something that is already unpleasant. Very important thing to say. Do not hate. Hating is directly opposed, diametrically opposed to the law that rules the universe, which is the law of love. It is a huge river. It has a lot of power and it's moving towards the sea. To try to swim against the tide on that river, against the force of the current, is not an intelligent thing to do. Okay? Hatred doesn't take us anywhere, and it's a profoundly destructive thing. It doesn't help anything. It will never solve any problems. It will create more problems. Therefore, the third advice, do not hate, is a wise one. We should follow it. It's an important thing. Then enjoy the present. Well, that's the fourth, point. It's particularly important because there are many people who do not appreciate what they have. They're always thinking of something better. If they have a nice house, well, they want a bigger one, more spectacular one, with a bigger plot, with a bigger garden, or whatever. So they're thinking about that all the time and how to get it. And they're not enjoying what they already have. It's a nice house, a nice garden. Enjoy it. You have a nice car, takes you places, doesn't give you problems or trouble. Enjoy your car. Don't start thinking, why couldn't I have a better one? More expensive one, more technological one. And then you're not enjoying what you have. The important thing is, in this particular case, to enjoy the present. Enjoy what you have, because the present, my brothers, the present is the only thing we have. We don't have anything else. It's the now what counts. And Eckhart Tolle says in his books, the power of now. It's the now that counts. So to live the now, the moment, is the most important thing, because it's the only thing that's real in our lives. The past is gone, it disappeared, and the future has not happened yet. It's in our hands to make it happen, but it hasn't happened so far. So why worry about the future? Why worry about the past? Let's stay with the present. And finally, leave your future to the providence. This does not mean that we should lean back in the sofa and wait for the providence to come over and pay our rent. That's not the idea, obviously. What there is in our idea, though, is those situations which we mentioned before, which don't seem to have to be solved. They seem to be unsolvable. We've done everything we can to solve them, but the problem is still there. Leave it to the providence. There is a protection for us human beings, and I have been a witness to that in my personal life, and I have seen it in the life of other people as well. In which people ask themselves, how on earth did I come out of this mess? I don't know what happened. I didn't do anything. I did everything I could to solve the problem, and I couldn't solve it. Somehow it solved by itself. It's not that important to determine who the providence is and how it works. The important thing is that there's always a solution to the problems. And we shouldn't worry about things that never happened, as Churchill used to say. This is an important thing. All right. When it comes to the question of thought, we have also something that is dangerous, which is thought control. There was a Russian scientist, Pavlov, who did experiments, even with dogs, in order to what is known as mind control. You can brainwash someone if you have enough mental power, to sort of hypnotize someone else, and deposit an idea in the subconscious mind that will trigger a behavior at a given moment to go and kill someone. It's a dangerous thing, the control of the mind, thought control, and the latent possibilities. We have to be very careful along those lines. The power of thought is for us sort of a blessing. It will allow us, to proceed in the proper way. And it's what makes the difference between us and animals. Animals, function according to parameters that nature dictates for them in terms of how they behave. We have the choice. We have the possibility of doing whatever we think we should do. This is a dangerous thing, to have that choice. But it doesn't have to be dangerous if we think carefully. If we think carefully before we proceed. There are many occasions in which us proceed under the impulse of our astral body, of our desires and emotions that compel us to function in a certain direction, without thinking prior to the consequences. And then when the consequences come, it's tough and difficult. And sometimes very difficult to undo whatever we've done that is wrong. So proper thoughts place them in the mental world. They will reflect in our reflecting ether and will eventually reflect in our personality. It will be the most appropriate thing to do, I think. It is also the shield against anybody who may try to invade us with wrong thoughts. There are many individuals who do that. Some people have achieved a considerable amount of mental power through what is known as black magic and so on. And they, may be able to attack other people without those people even knowing they're being attacked, causing them diseases, even death sometimes. Those who do that acquire a horrendous karmic situation. If they only knew what they're doing and what was in store for them as a result of the damage they do, they would never do it. What awaits them is really horrendous, very, very bad. The mind, the thoughts are an important power. To use it wisely is absolutely essential. And I'd like to close now on an advice that St. Paul, gave us, in terms of about 19 years ago. He said, finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are good, of good report, if there be any virtue, and if there be any praise, think on these things. What he's telling us is that we can make the world a paradise, if you so wish, just by having continually the right thinking process in our minds. Something dictated by love, unselfishness, and consideration for others. In our next class, we're going to be talking about something pretty crucial, the question of evil. Because, of course, if we're going to accept the idea that everything that exists has been manifested by God, where did evil came from? God being only good, absolute perfection. How come evil? Where did it come from? Especially when we see that many times it seems to be winning the battle. In the present situation of the world these days, in the year 2014, it's pretty worrying about that, because we see the explosive forces of evil all over the planet. Conflict all over the place. Brutality, cruelty, violence is a part of our times. Why? Is it possible that God had created something of that sort? Of course not. We are the ones who do it. Why do we do it, and where does it come from, and how to deal with it? That in our next lesson. Thank you very much.